tonight, Sports Extra is coming to you from the Swiss Spirit Alisa Hotel here in Accra. We're just in the wake of the inaugural Africa Women's Sports Summit, which featured a rich lineup of speakers, one of whom we'll be speaking to on tonight's edition of the Storyteller's Story Series. Who is she? Well, you've seen her break glass ceilings on Supersport time and again. She was formerly of SABC. She became the first African, not to mind woman, she might find offense with that, because she wants to be known as a sportscaster rather than a female sportscaster. Her name is Carol Tshabalala. She worked for Supersport as well as Premier League TV out of London. Good evening, Carol.
How are you, Fifi?
I'm fine, I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm excited to be on your show.
Right.
Finally.
Finally. Let's get into the conversation. The Africa Women's Sports Summit, what did it for you in terms of accepting the invitation to come and speak to aspiring young journalists in Ghana?
I mean, to hear, first of all, Fifi, that it was the inaugural, the maiden edition of the Africa Women's Sports Summit, that for me was quite shocking, because I've been involved in several of these kinds of conferences and summits, but globally, on a global level. And we know that this conversation of women, not just in sport, just women in business, women in society taking their place, it's been an ongoing conversation. And like I say, you know, I'm African. Africa is so dear to my heart. So whenever the call comes to do anything or to give back to Africa in any way that I can, I'm there. I'm at the forefront. So the second I got the invitation, I said, listen, I will make sure that I'm there. I'm not quite sure what my schedule is going to look like at the time, but I will make this a priority, and I'm coming to Ghana.
Interesting. Now, how difficult has it been, your journey? I mean, you mentioned at the summit that when you were starting, you were a bit of a rare gem in terms of being a woman sportscaster. And of course, eventually you described yourself as a sportscaster, period. But starting out at SABC, how was it like? How was the scene like?
It was interesting. I think, you know, there were positives and negatives to when it is that I got started about 10 years ago, in that, as you rightfully said, not a lot of women were in the game. So there wasn't much that was expected of me. I didn't feel the pressure to be like someone else.
Was that an advantage?
It was an advantage. You know, I think that was a major positive for me, because I was almost given carte blanche. It was like a clean canvas, and I could write my own story the way I saw fit.
Make your own mistakes.
Make my own mistakes. Showcase my own strengths and not be compared to anyone else, because as you rightfully said, I'm a woman and I was very, very different. So I wasn't compared to my male counterparts to an extent, but also I made sure that never would I be questioned, by ensuring that I just added to the knowledge that I had. Before every single interview, before every single program, I'd make sure that I was prepared. Like, you know, preparation for me is absolutely key. Even to this day, I do it. I know what's happening, but I'll make sure that I add something extra. You can never be too prepared. So that's always been, I think, just that driving force, and something that's given me an edge is that I've always been so well prepared. So yeah, it was challenging initially, like to break in. Right. Breaking in and finding my place, my niche. But what was great is that I was given that blank canvas to tell my own story.
Interesting. Now, Carol, what strikes me about you is your confidence. I told a lot of people just watching you speak today. Do you think it's something that is congenital or something that you acquired with the trade? Is it something that you put on or something that has become a part of you?
This is me. You know, I never had the vision to say, oh, I want to be involved in sports. You know, I've always had the passion, but I've always been outspoken.
Even as a child?
Even as a child. I was always a performer and entertainer. I love the stage. I love being in front of people and speaking out, public speaking, debating, acting. And I thought that maybe my career path would be maybe in the entertainment sphere, because I knew I was someone who didn't shy away from the limelight. And when I'm put in a situation where I'm talking about something that I'm really passionate about and very well informed about, like sport, for example, then I excel.
It comes across effortless.
It's effortless. You know, this is just my passion that is driving me. I'm talking about something that I'm not uncomfortable about or nervous, you know, about. So I think then that's what you see. That's where the confidence comes from, because I'm right at home here. This is my home. This is my life. I'm comfortable in this.
Your
situation.
Home, indeed. Now, how so? Why sports journalism and why sports broadcasting, not supposed to say writing or any other thing?
I think this is a journey and a career path that found me. The way that I got into it. I mean, I was telling my story, being invited to the SABC, shown how a voiceover.
That was your first sort of experience with journalism, voiceover.
Exactly, it was.
Right.
You know, it was voiceovers, and I was invited through a colleague of mine, Graham Richards, who was working on a junior sports show. So it just so happened that that was my introduction into this world of journalism, into this world of television productions, as it were. And I loved it. You know, I loved it. And because it was junior sports, I got given first-hand knowledge and an introduction to sports through various sporting codes and at the grassroots level. So it was an apprenticeship of the highest caliber, and the best way possible to get introduced into sports journalism is right there at the bottom when you're talking to under fives, you know, and you're talking about the basics in sports. So even my delivery, it had to be basic because the audience as well, they were youngsters. So you had to be very basic, and you had to break things down and not be at that much of a high level. So I was also given an opportunity to grow in this industry.
Right, so you mentioned starting at the grassroots, which means you went through the mill on your way to what you consider as the top now, right? I mean, you've hosted a Ballon d'Or ceremony. Tell us about it.
Unbelievable. And the way that actually came about, remember South Africa hosting the first African World Cup, back in 2010, and I played a very key role. So I did a lot of the events for FIFA and some of the top sponsors as well on the ground. And then when I actually hosted the opening ceremony, which was huge, beamed live to billions
of people across the world.
When I hosted that, the FIFA Secretary General Jerome Falk afterwards said, "Oh my goodness, you did such an amazing job. You did a sterling job. We didn't know really who Carol Tshabalala was."
That's a recommendation right from the top.
It was, and they'd seen me do the CAF Confederations Cup draws and the opening ceremony, but this was the big stage. This was it, and he was really impressed afterwards. So backstage, he was congratulating me. In fact, I have the exact photograph with David Beckham in the background somewhere there. And he said, "Wow,
this was from 2010."
This was in 2010. It was actually 2009, end of 2000. Beginning of 2010, opening ceremony. I forget when that was, the final draw in the opening ceremony, beginning of 2010. And then afterwards he said, "Wow, you did such an amazing job. You know, if there's anything," or was it in 2009? No, it was 2010.
2010.
And he said it was in 2010, yeah. And he said, "Is there anything that like I could do for you? Is there anything that you would love to do? Anything that you can ask of me?" And I said, "You know what? I want to host the FIFA Ballon d'Or."
Wow.
You know, so it took me having, you know, you set personal targets for yourself, and you say, "Okay, this is what I want to do." You have to have that vision for yourself, and I'd always had that vision, and
you always
I
wanted
was
to host a
prepared.
Ballon d'Or?
Not always, but it was one of those things that I said, "Hey, listen, why don't you have our, you know, African brothers and sisters hosting this? You know, these are the Oscars of football." And
football is like the most powerful phenomenon in the world.
Exactly, and I see myself as a global sporting icon. So I said, "No, listen, this is what I want to do." So when he asked that question, and if I did not have that vision, I probably would have said, "I don't know, let me think about it, maybe get back to you." Did I have his contact details? I don't even remember then, and probably wouldn't have happened. But because I said I want to host and he said, "What, really? What you've just done is far bigger than the FIFA Ballon d'Or." I said, "Well, be that as it may, that's what I want to do." And he said, "On my word, you will host the next one." And that's precisely what happened
in 2011.
The one
Lionel Messi, I believe,
yeah,
won.
He won.
How was the experience? Run us through the night, you know, preparation. Were you nervous? I mean, you've been doing journalism for many years before.
I have to admit, I was nervous. It was next level. I'd never hosted something to that extent. And I mean, seeing...
This is a ceremony watched by almost everyone who loves football in the world.
Agreed. And before the night of the actual awards, you get to meet the finalists. You get to meet the finalists, sit down with them and get to know them. We're shooting a couple of promo videos. So to do that, here's Messi, here's Xavi. I think Ronaldo had also made, here's Cristiano. And, you know, you're conversing with them. and you're seen as one of the most important individuals in this production, because you're the one, once the cameras go live, you have to convey the message.
Captain of the ship.
Have to exactly. You're steering this ship, and it was just so unbelievable how the respect, that I got from these icons. I had to kind of calm down a little bit. I mean, Messi for me was just like.
Is Messi your favorite player?
He's one of my favorites, definitely. Okay. Yeah.
But who is your favorite? That's a necessary digression.
Listen, I've got a couple. And it's the list. The names have been added onto the list through the years. Right. Listen, I'm African, so for me, the African story and the African representation has always been my driving force behind the teams that I support and the athletes that I support. So individuals like Didier Drogba, who come on, to be celebrated globally, and to go and excel in the Premier League the way that he did, and never
even
forget
in the Champions League at a point,
and never even forget where he came from as well. Always heeding the call to come back and to play for the Ivory Coast. He's definitely one of my all-time favorites.
Samuel
Eto'o, I mean Michael Essien, all of those, Yaya Toure, and most recently now Sadio Mane,
or Mohamed Salah.
Right. All of them. Sadio, Mohamed, Naby Keita, Joel Matip. So I'm a Liverpool supporter now, currently.
Okay. But you haven't always been a Liverpool supporter?
Not always. I was a Chelsea supporter because of the strong African contingent. Then when that, Kalu, and then as soon as that dissipated, I then supported the next strongest African influence in the Premier League, Mr. Yaya Toure, who was winning not Ballon d'Or, but the African Football of the Year back to back. So I became Man City.
Unprecedented.
Man City. And then as soon as he left, as we know, definitively last season, I then needed to find
a new team with an African presence.
Yeah, that's what I do. I follow those. So it was unbelievable to be taken behind the scenes, to meet the stars of the show, to be treated like such a professional. I mean, you are the best of the best.
Wow.
And the production.
And the money must have been good.
The money was fantastic, but that was secondary. And my mom got to travel with me. She came with me to enjoy the experience. So for her to see her little girl.
Were you able to take your kids? I understand you have 3 children.
I have 3 children, but at the time I just had the one. I had the one, and my other one was still very, very young. Okay. Yeah, so it was the 2. So my 3rd son is actually my nephew. My sister passed away. Okay. Yeah. So I wasn't able to take the kids. They were still very young. I took my mom, and it was unbelievable. I knew that it was a defining moment in my career.
Is this something that you foresee yourself doing again?
Definitely. I mean, it's something that I've ticked. Once you've done it, you're like, yeah. And after that, I attended all of the ceremonies. Right. So I'm always on the guest list. So I get to go there.
Just by virtue of having been a host.
Yeah.
It must be exciting.
Relive those moments, and it's unbelievable. But I've done it. So it's not one of those things that I say, I want to do it again. I've done it, and I'm happy with that.
Interesting. Now, Carol, a lot has been said today here at Alisa about the stumbling blocks, the heckling hurdles that females have to face within the sports ecosystem. Now, a lot was said from, I think, the journalists from the DRC about men and, being sexual predators and stuff like that. Have you encountered some in your career, and how did you deal with them?
I have, and it continues. Men will take chances. Whenever they can.
Because there was a point where Asha mentioned that if she shows us her WhatsApp chat, we'll be amazed at some of the things that some respected men are saying. Now, how do you do? I mean, sometimes, as a journalist, you have to acknowledge that you have to get your story.
That's right.
And some people too may be overly nice without having an intention of, being a predator. So how do you sort of draw the lines? And
you know what? I've become so good at friend zoning. So a lot of these.
Wait, so you when you sense it's coming, you friend zone them
immediately. Right. It's like, listen, buddy.
But some people are tenacious. They're like, she has friend zoned me, but I want to go further.
They continue. So that's why I said it's so important to always be professional. And as soon as you start seeing the conversation straying, or you see where it's going, then you shut it down immediately and you say, listen, this is not what's going to happen here. Give me the respect. I'm here to do a job. So let's get that done. Let's always remain professional, and listen, you can remain my friend. But it's just so important that you're very outspoken about your values as well. Because let me tell you something, once you've allowed that individual to overstep their boundaries, there's no turning back. People talk. you know, and you're going to have a particular reputation, and you're not going to be taken seriously anymore. So the reason why I've continued as well.
Is it a deliberate thing, you protecting your brand? Have you always deliberately sort of carved out your brand? Do you have a team? Do you do it alone? But some of these things can get really...
I don't know. If you say a team, I guess you'd say my family.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
You know, I've
You have
got a
an
very
agent?
small. I've got a manager. Yes,
Okay,
who's my best
okay,
friend.
okay.
So it's a very small circle.
Right.
It's a very, very small circle, and I haven't found the need. I'm a very humble, very down to earth, very easygoing individual, and I mean, my personality is what it is. What you see is what you get, and I haven't really needed to have reputation management or that type of thing. And I take it easy. I don't see myself as a celebrity. I just see myself as a journalist, you know, just another worker.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Right, we still have Carol Tshabalala right here on the Storyteller story series on Sports Extra. The conversation is getting interesting now. Now, Carol, you've been married before.
Yes.
Yes. How was it? And, you know, we talked about balance back at the summit. Now, how did you manage, you know, having a family, a husband, kids, and, you know, managing it with sports journalism, especially when you know, of course, you cannot go at the same pace at your male counterpart if you are, so to speak, going to have a baby and you're coming back. How did you manage all that?
I had my baby and I came back. My firstborn, I was back in the studio the next day.
Wow.
Literally,
Seriously?
then it's crazy. Literally the next day.
You had SABC
but I'm just
then?
that strong. I was at the
Right.
SABC. I'm just that strong and that driven. And you know, at the time, SABC, you get paid per call. Okay. So time that you take off,
you don't get paid.
You're not getting paid.
And you love your money.
Well, I need it. Not just I love it, but I need it. You know, I need it for a living. So a lot of time off of work was not even an option. So those are just some of the sacrifices. For example, having to leave a newborn baby at home. Sometimes I bring him into the studio because he was just so well behaved. He'd be quiet, I'd be live on air, and my son would be right there, literally, you know, just around the corner. You couldn't see him on camera, you know, but he was there and he was quiet, and I would feed him in between shots.
In the studio?
During the break in the studio. I mean, everyone knew my son because I'd bring him to work with me sometimes.
Is
So
he going to be a
those are the
broadcaster given the kind of
I don't
upbringing
know.
that he's
Actually,
had?
that's interesting, right? Yeah. Because he's interested in it. I think he's shown signs that he might be interested in being a broadcaster.
Is he as
Maybe
confident?
He is.
Perhaps
he's very
as charismatic?
confident, but also he's more talented on the field. He's a great footballer and a basketballer.
Would you encourage him to play football?
I do.
Right.
I encourage him to play all sports. In fact, that's how I raised all my kids. I took them to tennis lessons, to golf, to football, basketball. I really opened up, you know, the options for them, and as they grew, you started seeing where their strengths actually lay. And in fact, my last born is not interested in sports at all. He's more he's a creator. Doesn't disappoint me at all because he's really good
at the other stuff.
His other strengths. Yeah, he's a creative. He loves his music. He's so intelligent, and it just brings something different to the family. So I love that. So, you know, those are just some of the sacrifices. But I think what made it easier was having a partner. He wasn't the ideal partner, but he was also in the industry, so he would understand. If I had to go away on a particular production, he would oftentimes come along, or he'd be in the vicinity, or he'd understand the hours, you know, the extra hours. So there wouldn't be the funny questions of why did this take that long. I had boys, and they also loved sports. So I was able to travel with them, take them.
You do travel a lot with your boys. I see on your Twitter.
I do. I travel a lot with them. So
is that therapeutic for you?
It is. I'm able to amalgamate family time and my career all in one. I think I've just been fortunate, and I've made sure that I drive things that way.
Right. Interesting. Now let's talk about Premier League TV. Yes. How did that come about? And are you the only African on the hosting roster?
I am, in terms of being an
another
anchor.
glass ceiling.
Yeah. So, like I said, you know, I've always had a vision of where it is that I want to go. So in everything that I would do, if I was working with FIFA on a particular project at the World Cup, you know, I'd meet other producers, head of channels from broadcasters,
top production houses
all over the world. And in fact, you know, after the FIFA Ballon d'Or, a lot of the big names came knocking, your CNNs and all of that, and it was about finding just the right fit for where I was.
Were you tempted to leave Supersport at that point?
I was tempted. In fact, when I hosted the Ballon d'Or, I was still with the SABC,
Okay.
and I left the SABC immediately
to
afterwards, and I
Supersport.
came back. I went to Supersport.
Right.
Yes, so you know, there were always offers that were out there, and they definitely increased on a global stage after the FIFA Ballon d'Or. People were like,
After
"Oh,
every
but you saw
achievement."
that, yes.
Right.
After each, more and more came, you know, I used to travel a lot to the UK to watch, you know, live Premier League games, and kind of get to know more of those broadcasters out there, speak to your Skies, all of that. And that's one thing that I always said, listen, you know, we showcase the live Premier League games on Supersport, but in terms of the in-studio stuff that you see, the build-ups, the people that are marshalling those broadcasts
It's all done from outside. from
yeah,
London.
they're all in the UK, they're all in London, and I'm like, why is that? So I was like, listen, I want to break in here, you know, this is something
So
that
what's
I
a
want
plan
to
that
do.
you
It
had?
was a plan. That's what I'm saying. You must always have a plan, always have a vision, and then just push and push and push, and then finally you'll be connected with the right individuals, and they'll throw you into the deep end. I mean, I was invited to come on Fan Zone. You know, I'm an anchor. But I was there with an anchor, and he was kind of like, I don't know what role you're going to play, but they were told by the bosses, just make sure that she's on air. And I had to make something out of this, you know, and I think we had an interesting conversation. And as soon as the callers started coming in, Fanzo, you know, they
Fan
get
Zone,
views.
yes.
It was
All
mostly
over the world.
Africans. It was mostly Africans.
Wow.
You know, their fan base is mostly Africans that called in. People from Nigeria, and they said, hey, that's our sister, Carol, how are you? And then the producer started hearing this, the director, and he said, listen, let Carol handle all the calls. Every time, the next individual that would be involved in the show, Cameroon or South Africa, whatever, and they were like, okay, Carol can handle this one.
They
And
all
I
watch you on
ended up-
Supersport.
They do.
Champions League.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then I ended up basically being the anchor, and that was it. That was the start. And they said, keep coming, keep coming. So doing football today, and part of my vision is to do those match day lives. Eventually, that's going to happen. But I just need to find the balance.
between South Africa and London.
Yes, I do. So
That must be exciting.
I need to find that balance, you know. But it is very, very, very exciting. I love it.
Now, so you do Supersport now. Obviously, Supersport is Pan-African, you know, across the continent. But you know, a lot of people say, okay, maybe you want to hit the ceiling, maybe do Premier League TV full time at a point. You know, people, journalists who have made a name for themselves.
Yeah.
Ghana's Komla Dumo
Yeah.
was seen as like Africa's leading light because he was at the BBC. Do you think it's justified that fans or consumers of journalistic work are right to say that it's only when you work for an international broadcaster that you know you are seen in a certain light? Is that something that worries you? Is that something that you agree with?
Which is sad, but yeah, you know, agreed. It's only when you get celebrated beyond your borders.
Right.
That people start saying, hey, maybe she really is as good as we thought she is.
Was it the
Because
same
now
with
she's got
Premier
the
League
stamp-
TV
Of course,
for
now
South
she's got the
Africans?
stamp of
Right.
approval from people outside of these borders. They're like, because they're kind of like, yeah, well, we see her working on PSL and she's working for Supersport, she's working for a local broadcaster.
I think it's a
I
bit
think
different
no
because
surprise.
South
And then
Africans
they
sort
say
of feel
this-
they own you. So
Exactly.
yes. But
Yeah,
in
so
Ghana,
then,
like
so then
it's
they
different.
say, well, it's no surprise that she's good at what she does. Come on, you know, she's comfortable, she's here, she's at home. But now when you start getting that stamp of approval from an international broadcaster, then they go, wait a minute, maybe she is the best, you know, which is really sad, which is really, really sad. I think that there's also that African narrative where we need to start realizing our power. I mean, we see it in leagues all over the world, those standout African footballers that are just unbelievable, carrying their teams.
Right.
So we need to...
Is it something that you want to do? Maybe you saw Didier Drogba carrying Chelsea. Maybe you want to be Carol Tshabalala carrying Premier League TV. That's something that you aspire to.
Yes, maybe not Premier League TV. You know,
Maybe
don't
BBC.
scare Supersport just yet. I mean, they watch it. It could be any other
Maybe
broadcaster,
CNN.
but even big.
Right.
Nah, I got the offer at CNN, not for me.
Why?
Because
You don't love the US?
Because they news. They're more news driven. They don't have any live products that they put out on air. They don't have any rights to anything. So I'm like, no, I like to be involved. And I want to showcase. I
So
want
more
to be
like
able to
BT
get highlights.
Sport, more like
You
Premier League
know,
TV, more like
yeah,
Sky Sports.
Yeah, BN.
BN,
you know?
right.
Yeah.
Right, interesting. Still talking to Carol Tshabalala right here on our Storyteller Story series. She's our 11th guest and she's out of Ghana. Of course, one of the guests here at the Africa Women Sports Summit. Now, Carol, enjoying Ghana?
I'm loving Ghana. I love Ghana. It's not my first time, not my second time. I've been here a couple of times. Remember-
Where does Ghana rank countries you visited in Africa?
It's unique. You know, I think it's so difficult. I mean, I've been asked this question so many times, like, because I've been all over the continent. And it's
Have you been to every country on the continent?
No, not every. Definitely not. But I've been to many. And I love the people in Ghana. You know, I see some similarities. You know, in South Africa, we talk about Ubuntu, being made to feel right at home, just that humanity of people, that friendliness, the kindness. It's in Ghanaians. I love it. Every time I come here, it's like I'm right at home. I love the food. I'm such a foodie. I love the
Interesting.
food.
So quickly, before we end the show, Ghana jollof, Nigeria jollof. We just had to ask. We have to push you against me.
Listen, I'm in Accra. It's Ghana. It's Ghanaian jollof.
It's Ghanaian jollof for Carol Tshabalala. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Carol, for joining us. We've been speaking to Carol on the sidelines of the Africa Women's Sports Summit. She's been talking about her entire career through Premier League TV, through Supersport, through becoming the first African to host a Ballon d'Or ceremony. Thank you once again for joining us on Sports Extra. My name is Fiifi Anaman. Until I come your way again next week, it's good night and it's God bless.